Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Backyard Gardens podcast. I am your host, Ben, and I am with my lovely co-host, Miss Batavia, the Botanical.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know that we were going full name.
We always are. Well, not always, but okay.
Well, no,
This
people
is
didn't hear the full name. Give me my dues.
how many names should I throw in there? 3, 4.
No, just three is fine. We're warming up.
Batavia, the builder, the botanical builder. That's just what
You're
she's
just trying.
dubbed
You're
herself.
look. You're trying to get on my good side. You know what? You got me thinking I be building stuff. You know.
Okay. So this is something we had talked about when we were planning episodes out, like what is something that we wish we would have known when we first started. And this didn't really fall into that completely, but it came really close. And what it was, long season crops, man. Like, what does that even mean? And what do we need to think about before we plant in there? Because it can be a lot.
Yeah. So if you think about when I first started growing in my backyard, my first garden, I was growing things like tomatoes and peppers, basically mostly your summer plants, your, warm weather crops. And I plant them probably in June. By October, frost would kill them. And that was it. Like in my view, it was like just everything was one season, everything was the same length of time, it felt like. Yeah, sure, I got cucumbers before I got tomatoes, but I really didn't process it as one was taking longer than the other, you
Yeah.
know. And obviously now I know that there are things that really take a long time in the season compared to things that, have a faster return.
Yeah. I mean, there were some things that I didn't plant at all just because it just wasn't in my mind at the time. I didn't even think
Mm.
about it. And most of those would have been long season crops. So, that didn't really do much for me. And then I started noticing that some things were coming out faster and some things are coming out slower. But also in the mix of the summer, when you start getting vegetables, it's kind of like, whatever, this one's being slow. And then I didn't realize as I advanced in my gardening how like multi-season gardening, stuff like that, and
Mhm.
the effects that these can have across the board. So I think
Mhm.
it's a valuable conversation to have, and it's just something to think about while
Yeah.
while you're planning.
I think in general it's something it's good to understand this, but I think that for the gardener, if you kind of look at the profile this is most beneficial for, it's someone that wants to plant across more than one season. So you want to plant things in your spring, but you also want to plant things that are going to do well in your summer, and then maybe even in your fall as well. Like this is an important factor to consider, like those
Yeah.
things that take a longer period of time in the summer. And I don't want to say long as in like, it's so long, although sometimes it feels that way.
Well, yeah, we'll get into that. All right, look, we're starting to get into it. Let me do what we need to do. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Backyard Gardens podcast. I am your host, Ben, and I am with my co-host, Batavia. Say hi.
Batavia the Botanical. Hi.
If you'd like to support the show, you may do so by becoming a subscriber, a patron. Stop by our seed shop and pick up some seeds. Just added some seed starting tools in there. So we've got a little tamper multi-tool. We've got a seed sower, a handheld seed sower in there. And then my favorite tool is the chopstick. We added a chopstick in there. They're all made by yours truly. So please come check those out. And then all the rest of the links down below. And support our sponsor, the Planter app. But more on that later. Okay. I don't know. I think the place to start, deep thought there, was we need
Mm-hmm.
to figure out the parameters around this. Meaning,
Mm-hmm.
what are we considering long season? Like, what are the criteria to meet long season? So the first one I suggest we go over is it when you start seeds or when you plant them in the ground, plant the plant in the ground? Which one is it?
I think for ease of conversation, it needs to be when something is planted in its forever home. So it's planted in the garden.
Yeah. So transplanting.
Hmm.
So what we're referring to is the days to harvest. Um, in my experience, the days to harvest is almost always from my transplant date. I almost
Hmm.
never have it from the seed date. Do you?
Yeah, I think maybe one variety of radishes that I've got at like right at 30 days
Yeah.
from seed to harvest. And I'm talking about one time in my garden career with one
But that's
planting. Yeah, like that's the
but
only
just
time where I feel
because you
like it's
did
been
it one
spot on.
time, that's your
Yeah.
truth forever. That's always going to
Yeah,
be
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Like radishes are always going to be able to be harvested on the
Mhm.
days of harvest. So, okay. So I agree with that completely, actually, because I was thinking about this too. You know, you don't start carrot seeds inside typically. I know
Mhm.
some people amongst us have tried that in the past. Nothing wrong with that. But when the seed, and I don't know, you know, how appropriate this is in the gardening world, but when it is meant to be direct sowed, I
Mhm.
think that days to harvest date kind of falls in line with that.
Well, one could argue that, the germination of the plant, is really where that starts. When I talk about, for once we get to the actual days we'll talk about, but the starting point is once you're transplanting something into the garden. It doesn't mean we are excluding things that are more commonly direct sowed. It's just that your hands in the dirt in your garden is,
Yeah.
basically day one. So if it is direct sowing a seed for carrots, then that's day one when you put those seeds in there.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I agree
but
with that.
I get how, like, one could argue the 20 days it could take for those to germinate. Could the 21st day really be your day one? We gotta simplify it. So,
Yeah.
again, hands in dirt in the garden.
Yeah. Cause I mean, you know, there's so many variables in this.
Mhm.
It's insane. So that's the first one. And is there another variable we need to meet or are we good?
Well, how many days makes it long?
Okay. Yeah. That's a, yep. The most important question, right? Duh. Um, I'd say anything over 75 personally.
Yeah, I said that originally, and I feel like no one ever talks I feel like we talk about 75 days, 90 days, and 100 days are common, like, time frames.
Yeah.
And I feel like 90 days feels like a long time in the
Yeah.
garden. Like you're starting to, pace, even, you've been growing it every year. You're looking at it like, all right, let me check my notes from last year. So I
It's,
wrote down 75 originally too, but I kind of want to lean more into 90 plus.
yeah, to be fair to myself, as soon as I said 75, I was like, well, what if it's 76? That's not, you know, and then I immediately thought 90 days feel because
Hmm.
75 days is right on 2 months, you know, just,
Yeah.
you know,
Hmm.
it's a little bit over. Yes, I get it. But, you know, this is gardening world. This is not exact math. And that's the
Hmm.
beauty of
It
gardening.
absolutely is.
Um, one of the beauties, many, many beauties. But the second part of it is 90 days is 3 months. Okay.
Yeah.
That's crazy. 100 days. There's people listening to this show whose growing season, frost free days, is 100 days or less. So
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
talking about putting these plants in the ground and taking up your entire season. That's
Hmm.
intense.
You gave us an analogy when we were talking. You're like, was it driving cross country, did you say? What did you gave us an example of what you could do in 90 days, like to illustrate how long 3 months really is and what you could really accomplish in 3 months compared to, growing a
Yeah.
plant.
I mean, you know, it takes 3 days to drive across the country. So all the way across, it takes 3 days. It takes 3 months to hike from Georgia to Maine. It takes 3 months.
Mhm.
So in those 3 months, I would be done with my 2,000 mile hike before I can harvest my sweet potatoes. So
Yeah.
technically, I could buy a timer, plant my sweet potatoes, go on my 3 month hike, come back, rest for a couple weeks, then go out and harvest my sweet potatoes just to put it into perspective. That's
Well,
crazy.
wait, there and back though. Is that a 4,000-mile hike? Y I think we get the
No,
point though. It's like
it's just one way.
something about when you say 75 days and then I also think, "Oh, that's 2 months." That seems like, a couple of months, right? Although technically that's 2.5 months we're talking about. But as soon as you say 3 months, it's like that's a whole
Yeah,
quarter. Like, like that's we're I mean, weather is absolutely changing over that 3-month period, right? There's not a lot
100%.
that's constant in that 3 month when you talk about kind of the garden world and all. And and if you go beyond that, if I'm at 97 days, I'm like, good night, I'm going back and reading varieties again.
Yeah. Yeah, you really are. So, what's the considerations to, harness this and figure out, should I even plant this? Do I want to plant this? Or how much of this do I want to plant? You know what I mean? Um,
Mhm.
there was a
And
discussion in the beginning about tomatoes and peppers being long season,
oh yeah.
and
I
we
don't
got
even
a
know where we
little.
landed.
It was kind
I think we're
of
gonna
just.
find out.
I think we're gonna find out. Yeah, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. In the right corner, you've got Batavia.
I crossed my
The,
arms too, which I don't know if I've ever
you
done in this
did. You
podcast.
never
Okay.
crossed your arms. I got nervous. I started shaking. Um, so Batavia thinks she feels like they're long day,
Yeah.
long season. Excuse
I
me.
I could be jaded though, based on all of my woes when it comes to planting summer crops. But I'm trying to be realistic in saying if I put a transplant out, let's use my real life. Let's call it June 1st. And that plant is starting to grow in June. It's getting some size in July. I have rarely ever had a tomato that is of size, well, is ripe like in the early part of August. So I am closer to mid to the end of August, right? And I'm really starting to get them in great numbers in September. So
Right.
that puts me definitely over the 90-day period, right? And obviously tomatoes are different than some of your single harvest crops. So and like for me, the height of the growing season, I'm waiting on tomato plants to
Yeah.
produce.
Yeah. And
So,
when we were talking about it too, I was thinking, okay, I plant my tomatoes in the garden April 15th. And so you go May 15th, June 15th. By about mid June, that's 60 days, I will start getting greenish tomatoes. By the 75-day mark, to be fair and safe, I'm getting blushing tomatoes at that point. I may get a ripe tomato, like cherry tomatoes. Absolutely, there's an argument for those. I think personally, every garden should have one cherry tomato plant, just because it makes you feel
mhm.
special. I mean, that's all there is to it.
That's exactly
Um,
how I would have said it too. Yeah.
yeah, because I mean, other than that, it's like But now I will say this: that's because I grow determinate tomatoes.
Mhm, mhm.
Indeterminate tomatoes, which are notoriously slower producing.
Yeah.
Now that's a different situation. And that's where you really start getting in the weeds and you start, breaking down classifications and all that stuff, which I don't
Mhm.
really want to get into. But that's just as part of the decision that you make. Now, peppers, there's an argument for peppers.
Mhm.
There's
Mhm.
a
If you
strong
throw
argument.
yeah, hot peppers, if you start with that, I mean, you could easily be closer to 100 days for those. Then if you even look at sweet peppers, it depends on what you're trying to do because let's go with your classic bell pepper. So, and we have California Wonders in the shop, so link below. Um, if you use a California Wonder or any other bell pepper, which is going to be a sweet pepper, it's going to produce and get to size. And generally, they're going to be green, right? Now, if I'm waiting for that California Wonder to turn red, I mean, you could be talking weeks later. right?
Oh
So
yeah, I don't
if
even wait on them to turn red. That's not even an option for me.
every year I tell myself I'm not going to, that I'm gonna harvest more because I have enough plants. I'm gonna harvest more green, and well, you know my
So
story.
I want to tell you this too because you and I have not agreed that when they change colors they're sweeter. I can't really tell the difference, but I did read something recently scientifically that was like, yes, it does create, it is a sweeter pepper when they turn red. I just don't have the taste buds for that. I don't know. But
Yeah,
you
no,
were
we didn't
definitely right about that.
disagree. I I know that I'm right. Like that, like
Y'all see what I got to deal
I mean,
with?
that's
Like if you're watching this on
I don't.
YouTube, the face says it all.
Yeah, that's a lot more to add. Like I mean, I'll let you be wrong in this.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, well, I was
it's not
definitely
worth the
wrong.
argument for me because I'm absolutely certain that I'm right in this.
But the thing too is, the argument is when things are touched, kissed by frost, they're sweeter. And I was just saying the
Mhm.
other day, like, my Brussels
Yeah.
sprouts, if that's the case, they taste like Snickers bars at this point. You know what I mean? Like, that's just not true.
The science
So,
behind that, you know, starch is converted to sugars. It's supposed to support it, but does it really reach your taste buds? Is it noticeable?
yeah.
Notable. Um, but yeah, I think I mean, I've had more green peppers than anything in my lifetime, and unless you cook green pepper, well, I'm not going to argue that. I know I'm right. Let's move on. So, bell peppers, hot peppers, any pepper in my world, maybe a snack pepper, like maybe you could get those to produce similar to cherry tomatoes, but peppers generally are in line with tomatoes. I look at them as a longer season crop. You're going to spend some time with it in the garden before it really produces.
Yeah. I would say, thinking about peppers and putting it into perspective, if this is one that if you went by seed, this would be the longest season crop because it takes
Mhm,
forever.
mhm.
But putting it out there, the thing is you have to think about too, and I love that you talked about the snack peppers. I love that because what that's telling me is the size of the final fruit dictates how soon you're going to get your harvest. Case in point, cherry tomatoes. Case in point, smaller peppers. It's just they don't have to grow as big and they don't have to ripen. At one point, I was looking, when I first started all of this stuff, I said, I'm going to have a crazy garden and I'm going to grow all these crazy vegetables. And I got to
Mhm.
looking and I dug deep in the world's worst seed starting catalog ever, Baker's Creek. And I found bell peppers seeds that were like a pound. They grew to be a pound. So I said,
Mhm.
okay. I was like, this is absolutely something I want to get on board in. So I started looking into it. And then what I found out is you may get one bell pepper off the plant. And that kind of started me because then I ended up getting that year lipstick peppers, which were noticeably smaller. And I was getting so many peppers I couldn't keep up with them. We were throwing them in the trash. I was throwing them in the
Mhm.
woods. You know what I mean? It was insane. So I started thinking about it, and then the cherry tomatoes and all that stuff kind of added up. So and when it comes to peppers, it depends on the variety that you get, is going to tell you which one is going to be, the fastest and the longest. So just think about that. And eggplants fall into this category as well. If you want a big eggplant like you get from the store, you're going to be waiting longer than if you get like an Ichiban type. I don't know what type they're called, but the Ichiban was the first one I grew, and it was very prolific. So, and it's just because it's a smaller eggplant, plain and simple.
Yeah, I think that the only exception would be um, like your hot peppers. And this is the key. And check the chat. This is the key. It's So a pepper plant that's growing, and it gets of size, whatever that actual plant size is going to be, then you start to see the flower buds, right? I feel like hot peppers sometimes to get to the point of the pepper plant is grown and then the flower buds come on is longer than some of your other peppers because
Right.
I did like a lemon spice pepper, which is a jalapeno, but it's yellow. and I just waited and waited and waited and watched and waited and waited. I've done a habanada, which is like again, it's a take on the habanero. It's supposed to be mild, and that the plant just takes so long to get started, and even when you transplant, it's so long to grow. So there's a few exceptions that they're going to produce a small fruit, but they're going to take longer than my bell peppers in some cases. I do believe because there's not a one size fits all. The general rule of thumb is smaller produce, shorter time, larger produce, longer time.
That's what I said. Booty
I
trap.
agree. Yeah, I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
After I've
And
gave you two exceptions.
that's a tough lesson to learn too. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? If you fall into it, great. But it was the whole thing of like, I want to have this crazy garden. I want to stick out that kind of set me down that path. So, as far as like growing and the considerations before you do these, for instance, we've got multiple types. So I actually, Batavia, have two different categories of long season crops. I have
Okay.
your normal long season crops, and then I have your awkward long season crops. And the
Okay.
awkward ones are they come out at awkward times of the year, right? So, your sweet potatoes
Okay.
are pretty normal for the
Mhm.
most part.
Mhm.
They're going to grow throughout your summer season, and then you're going to pull
Mhm.
them out, and then, there's still the fall left. But then you've got stuff like onions, short day onions, or garlic for that matter, that you plant and then you're harvesting like right in the middle of the season. And it's like, well, what do I do next? Right. And this is where this starts to kind of factor in too, because it's like, what's the crop that's going to follow it next? We're assuming, or I'm assuming that you are, you know, multi-season gardening and then succession planting behind crops and stuff like that. So, what can we
Yeah.
put in behind it? And I'm not really asking what can we put in behind it, but that consideration of if I pull those onions out in June 1st, well, that's almost summer. I'm getting into the heat of the summer here, and it's going to be harder to grow. So I need to think about that, right? And then you just kind of go down the line. So
Yeah, I think so that's the piece that would have been they are kind of the exceptional long kind of crop. So that long category, I'm gonna double that up. Um, is if you need to be cautious around the changing weather during their growing period.
yeah,
Right, so when I plant sweet potatoes, similar to what you described, they're basically I'm planting them when the weather is warmed up, and they're gonna do all of their growing during the hot part of summer, and it's just a matter of when I'm gonna dig them up closer to the end of summer and early fall, right? Like, I'm not there's no cautionary notes around sweet potatoes, it's just about making sure that it's not too cold when you first plant them. Something like, and this is for me and some folks in the Midwest, something like a cabbage as a longer season crop, hands down. I can plant that in the spring and it will grow as we get to summer. And generally speaking, it's fine with
right,
the summer heat that comes on. However, I do need to be conscious of my watering. You increase watering when the weather warms up. And so you don't want to give a cabbage plant too much water, right? Similar to like carrots. Like these are some of the crops where you have to, because it's in the garden so long, and your weather is changing as it's maturing. Some varieties of potatoes could be considered that. Not all, but some. Um, so yeah, I definitely think that's important. I want to say one of the more important considerations, but I think the most important consideration for me is do I have intentions on planting something after whatever this long season is, whatever that long season plant is?
yeah,
If I don't have intentions on planting anything in that space afterwards, see other considerations. But if I have intentions on planting something afterwards, I really have to give it some thought because for me, I found year over year, I oftentimes don't have enough time left in the growing season on the other side of that long season crop to get something that I want to grow in
Right.
and out.
Yeah, that's the tough thing is, what you want, not what
Hmm.
can be done, and that's why
Yeah.
it's good to have in your toolbox, what's fast, bush beans,
Hmm.
radishes, stuff like that. And then what takes
Hmm.
a long time, because you start getting into a lot of different gardening techniques. And within reason, you can plant, behind what I call an awkward long season crop. You can plant another long season crop behind it, but you've got to be really on point with it. Where I think it's almost not worth the effort, in my opinion. So, um, one thing too that we noted, and I did check the chat, and I think it is fair to say, and I was thinking about this earlier too, is your days to harvest is dependent on light, available nutrients, and I want to say this, so listen very closely, temperature in which it
Hmm.
grows. So, and spacing, all that stuff, water, all that stuff factors into it. So if you are underfeeding, it's going to be slower. If you're underwatering, it's going to be slower. If it's too crowded, you get the gist here. So I think when they give us those numbers, I think it's an average of the best times that they've had of
Hmm.
a crop.
Hmm.
That's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Do you think any different of that?
Yeah, I think we've had this part of the conversation. I agree with you then, and I agree with you now. It could have been more along the lines of germination times, though. We may have been talking about like it's noted on like pristine conditions, but I agree with you here too. Like these days, that it's average days to harvest,
Yeah.
and it's if all things go well.
Yeah. So, and I focused on temperature because that kind of factors into this too. We talked about, some of these crops coming out at a bad time. And then when they're a long crop, depending on where you are, you may have to put them in the ground a little bit before they really want to be in the ground. So, you need to make that plan accordingly because we're always marching towards your frost date, right? In gardening, that's it. You're always marching towards your first frost date. So if we take sweet potatoes for instance, well, let's not even do sweet potatoes. Let's change it. So when we do long season crops, Batavia, we need to change it so we can kind of work in a list of long season crops as well.
Hmm.
So corn, right? You're growing corn. Do you think it's long season?
No.
No. Okay.
Mm.
Okay. I'll take that back then. Carrots. So we'll do
Mm.
carrots, and when you're planting your carrots, you may have to put them in a little bit early, or so for me, I need to get them in earlier so that they can be ripening and maturing during that perfect season, that perfect
Yeah.
temperature. Otherwise, it's going to get brutally hot and it's going to affect the flavor and the quality of them. So I have to manage that process. There's other ones as well. So
I think
you go ahead.
carrots is such a good one because take a step even further back, starting them a little bit earlier than maybe whatever the recommendation is because carrots can take a while to germinate,
Yeah.
right? So remember, we said when we get our hands in the soil in the garden is our day one. So if I go on, let's say March 1, the soil is workable, and I put well, I'm probably never going to do this, but March 1 here in Chicago, I sow seeds and I look up and March 15th, nothing's germinated. I look up in March, 21st, nothing's germinated, right? I may need to resow those seeds. And so now maybe things start germinating. But if I would have waited until the absolute recommendation or even a little bit later, because I'm still going to add 90, 100 days to those carrots whenever,
Yeah.
like from the point where I started. So I think um, finicky is the term I'm going to use, especially if you have some finicky growers, whether it's when they're germinating, them stalling out, any of those things. It's, if they're more pest prone, all of those things are the question marks around, do you want to deal with that for these longer season crops? Because a lot of them will have that. The only thing I've never had trouble with from like a pest management would be like a sweet potato. I think every other plant that I consider longer crops, I feel like there's some level of heat or pest pressure. Because think about it, if we're talking about 90 to 100 days, it's clearly going to cross more than one season. And for me, it's
Yeah.
either going to be spring to summer or summer to fall. So there's going to be heat in there, right?
Well, the thing is about the seasons too is different pests come out at different times. So
Hmm.
you may start it at one point and not really have that pest, and then you go into that season with it. It's just like, you know, everybody's right now. If you don't have snow in your garden, which by the way, we got 14 inches of snow the other day, unheard of.
Yeah.
So, um, but you get winter weeds and summer weeds. They look
Hmm.
completely different. So you know that you're getting something different out of there. So it's something that you've got to take into account. I plant,
Yeah.
the winter weeds in particular is why I don't plant my carrots because it
Mm. And
overtakes them completely. So I
yeah.
just don't plant them in the fall. I just whatever, it doesn't matter, you know.
And you're maybe less likely to go out and actually weed there. Um, is there a long season crop that you've decided to not grow because it's a long season crop?
No, not that I know of off the top of my head. I've kind of gotten to the point where I know what I want to grow, and come hell or high water, I'm gonna grow it. You know what I mean?
Mhm,
So,
mhm,
um, I did last year. I didn't grow onions because of that reason, and I
mhm.
wasn't happy. I wasn't happy with the situation, so I planted them this year. But no, there's nothing really, and I think part of that too is as my garden's grown, I have more space to
Mhm,
allow to these
mhm.
things, and I've changed the
Yeah.
way that I grow to where basically one crop is in an entire bed, so it's easier
Mhm.
for me to manage that way. How
Yeah.
about you?
I think, and we were talking about this vegetable in a recent episode. I think Brussels sprouts are probably the crop. Like I described in a previous episode, some of the troubles I've had with growing Brussels sprouts. But if it was shorter time, like I probably would give it another try and another try.
Yeah.
So it's well over 100 days from the experience I've had to get what I get. And I just, and I really enjoy Brussels sprouts. It's not my favorite kind of vegetable. I almost said leafy green. I don't want to get into that whole dispute.
No.
Like, um, but yeah, I think that's probably the one.
So first
And
of all, I got to say
Mhm.
this. On this show, anytime Brussels sprouts needs to be brought up, you need to let me do it because that's my baby. But no, go ahead.
You've earned the right to bring it up too. It's like, what is that buzzing noise? He's talking about Brussels sprouts. Oh, okay, okay, okay.
Well, I wanted to bring it up
Um,
because Brussels sprouts are the longest season crop in my garden by 100%. So I plant them in August, and then I will finish my harvest in March. That's 210 days that they're in if you do them roughly. So 210 days. Now, that being said, we talked about this in the subscriber episode, but just to kind of reiterate it, that being said, it's because of I get less sun in the middle of
mm,
winter and I have to grow them in the middle of winter where it's cooler. So the fertilizer's not breaking down as good, the soil's not as active. So there is that, but that's just the story for my garden. And that's the other thing that makes it difficult because peppers for you. It's the story for your garden, right? It just depends on where
mm,
you are. So,
yeah.
yeah, Brussels sprouts are the longest season crop by far.
And you don't grow Brussels sprouts in the spring
Can't.
because they're not going to survive when summer starts, right?
Yeah, the heat's too
You don't have
much.
enough cool weather in the spring to be able to manage them, right?
Right.
Yeah. And
So,
just for the record, I've only ever planted them in the spring, and it may be the vegetable that, and we didn't talk about this in the previous episode, but there may be some impacts that summer is having on those plants and the stress of summer and some of the reasons why I experienced what I experienced. But anywho, um, I do like the no. If I want to grow a damn it, and I'm having trouble, I don't care if it takes 200 days. I'm gonna keep at it,
Yeah.
because you have been victorious these last 2 seasons, right?
Yes. Yes.
Two,
And
yeah.
and we and just so y'all know, um, the the Brussels sprouts went through 14 inches of snow, 8-degree temperatures for multiple nights, and 3 days below freezing, and there is no damage to them at all.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
all those people that say, yeah, whatever, when it's cold, you insert whatever
Yeah,
word you
they're
want.
hardy. Yeah.
And now I'm not going to lie, I was nervous as a cat in a room full of rocking chairs. So I was not very comfortable. I did not know what was going to happen, but my son and I took the covers off today, and I was delightfully surprised at it. And when I
Good,
say the
good.
covers were on it, they were open on the ends. So they weren't even fully encapsulated. They were just,
Hmm.
so yeah, it's pretty crazy, but 210 days. Now that 210 days works for me in my garden this time of year though. But
That's huge, though.
yeah.
I mean, that's a long time. And so I was gonna ask, like, if you planted them in September, what would happen? But I think then you kind of roll back into you're cutting down the number of days, but you're also like that August period gives you the most light they're gonna have during their entire growing period,
Yeah.
right? To get them off to a start. Um, I feel like the number of days and then the weather you're having during those days, you could put that across the board for any plant. Like that's what's important, understanding how many days, that it takes to grow and what your weather conditions are during the days you plan on growing them. I didn't realize that. Yeah, I still struggle with the idea of what's optimal for something like Brussels sprouts for me. I feel like spring is more optimal for cabbage for me than fall is. Now, and I've not fully vetted this. I still want to give this a try. Um, I think I did my single transplant for cabbage last year, went in September, and I think it may need to be something like a nice size transplant going in August, which seems crazy because it's so hot in August,
Yeah.
but I feel like that's gonna give me the best. That's still a really short leash. August, September, October. You really may be in an optimal area where it's getting more sun. Anyway, I don't want to game plan that fully out, but these are the considerations because I run out of um, non completely continued freezing temps. My calendar is shorter at the end of the year. I was chatting with another gardener and she's in Florida and she's like, "Is it me or did winter come earlier this year?" And I said, "Well, not necessarily. No, I thought to myself, not necessarily earlier than ever, but definitely earlier." I replied, "Earlier than in previous years." Like we had snow in November here in Chicago, which hasn't been the norm in the past few years. And then we had snow and freezing temps in December. And that's, of course, we're past our average first frost date. Yeah, first frost date. But I've been able to get mild temps in November and December. And that's important to some of these longer season crops that I'm trying to grow that time of year. Right. So that all kind of is tied up into it.
Right.
Um, so yeah.
I want to take a beat and just say that I feel like we talk about this a lot at the end of the season, but in the beginning of the season, I think it's really important. A lot of these long season crops are frost hardy and
Hmm.
they can be planted before your last frost date, and they can be growing after your first frost date. So just keep that in mind as you do this and you start making your plans, because like cabbage is one that's just like I mean I'm planting my cabbage out in 10 days. My cabbage will go outside. That's crazy if you think about that. I still have 8 inches of snow on the ground on my garden beds. I still have, it's still in the 20s at night. but that's how it works. So we're going to harden them off, take our time getting them ready, and then bada bing, bada boom, we're going to put them out and then hopefully grow the hell out of them.
But you've gotten 40 and 50 degree highs. So this is the number one
Yes.
question. Is your soil frozen?
No.
Yeah, that's
Even
the
with
key.
snow on it, it's not frozen.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. My soil
now,
is frozen and I have a special project that I'm going to wait until I actually complete before I tell you, and then we could laugh about how ridiculous it is, or we could say that's a damn good idea.
okay.
So I'll
I
talk
love a
to you
good
about it in a
laugh.
couple of days. Yeah. Hey,
No.
that's a damn good idea.
The other thing is planting into the next season. So these long season
Hmm.
crops, they will grow into the next season. So
Hmm.
um, if you have
Always.
succession plans, yeah, if you have succession plans, stuff like that, it could be foiled with that. I have a fail safe way. You want me to say it
Hmm.
or you want me to wait? So in my area where I grow, I can grow, if I'm really, really careful, I can grow year round. If I'm really careful. And that means like right now, this time of year, I have to be very selective. I'm still growing right now, but it's just not a lot. But the problem I have is emptying out beds and giving them time to rejuvenate and getting them prepped. So these long season crops come in because I can make that plan and say, hey, you know what? For instance, my Brussels sprout bed, after my Brussels sprouts come out, I'm just going to go back and I'm going to simply plant a cover crop in it for the season and let it go through the spring and maybe even into the summer and then come into it and then harvest that and then plant for the maybe summer into fall. So, those are the things that I do to, I don't know. This is an opinion time for you, Batavia. Do you think that that is me justifying growing that crop, or do you think that it's like a method to kind of work your way around it?
I think it's you justified. Uh-oh. Uh, uh,
Yeah, you're
you see
there.
the shake? Yeah, I think it's you justifying growing
You
it.
think so?
And I think that that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I just, I think it was something that just kind of came up because I was looking at it and I was like, man, these Brussels sprouts have been in there for 7 months. How can I even begin to put something back behind it? Like it
Because
seems
you don't
unfair.
you don't feel that way about other crops. You are much more like, hand on table about some other crops. This one is one, I mean, there it checks all the boxes for you as far as why would you grow it. And because it's giving you the challenge that it did some years back.
Yeah.
I feel like it's that whole idea of like you're not gonna let this go, you know. Like and so you're bending your own rules, so to speak. I think that's totally fine. Cause I don't this is the key. I was thinking about this right at the beginning of um, your press statement around Brussels sprouts. And you're like, I could grow all year if I'm careful, all year long if I'm careful. And sometimes I feel like when we casually talk, people hear it and they may think, oh, your full garden is full of food all year long. Or even if I say, hey, I'm growing in the spring and summer and fall, it doesn't mean that every planting space is full and growing something, right? Like if you were able to grow, like actively growing all year long, it wouldn't be in every single bed that you have, right?
No, no. To be honest, I never have all of my beds planted with edible food at the same time. There's always at least one bed that is not planted completely. So what does that mean? It can be a cover crop. It could just be mulch, something, but there's one
Hmm.
bed that's always free to go. Now, I may have everything planted and there may be like a crop that I'm waiting to harvest out of there, like one Brussels sprout left. I'm at
Hmm.
that point that bed's empty, but it's not going to be replanted. So every season, like right now, I've got stuff growing in. I'm down to three, maybe 4 beds. And next week it's going to be 2. And then the next week it's going to be 8. So
is that by design that a bed is always empty, or is it just, it
yeah,
happens to work out that way?
no, that's designed because I kind of got to the realization that I was pushing my garden too hard and I was
Mm-hmm.
spending too much time trying and effort growing, but not getting. So, not harvesting. So I ended up
Mm-hmm.
kind of factoring that in. And really the Brussels sprouts did it. And, after a full year of growing and then 210 days of a crop coming out, I just felt like, you know what? It doesn't work. It doesn't have to be this way. So,
Mm-hmm.
it
Mm-hmm.
worked out well for me. Now, as far as and the cover crop also factors in because of my bees and stuff like that, so it helps with that. But I always needed a way to kind of amp up my garden. And for people like you, it's not a big deal because you get months of it. When I lived in New England, I got 6 months of no garden, 5 months no
Mm-hmm.
garden. It was
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
completely asleep and ready to go. And you're doing a lot for your soil by doing that. So and this year, all of the empty beds out there is all by design. I went on YouTube
Mm-hmm.
and I may have even said it on here. And I said back in September, my goal by the time is to plant in the spring is to have at least 1 or 2 beds with plants in them. That's it. Or at most 1 to 2 beds. And I'm almost there. So I can
Mm-hmm.
basically
Mm-hmm.
make that happen at this point. So I knew that I had to, because I sat there and I watched side by side. I had a bed in the front that was tomatoes and peppers, and a bed behind it that was tomatoes and peppers. The front bed was
Yeah.
planted that year, was made that year. Fresh soil, did amazing. The bed behind it is an older bed, struggled the whole season. And that just told me everything. They got the same fertilizer, the same water, same sunlight, everything. It was the soil was just that depleted. So that was really what kind of set me off in that direction.
Yeah. Hmm. Makes me think about a couple of beds in my garden. But yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay. Well, look,
long season crops.
long season crops. We got to do this real quick. Okay. This show is sponsored by the Planner app. Check it out. If you like or you need to organize your garden and plan it, the Planter app is the way to go. It is an absolute joy to use, easy drag and drop interface. Get yourself the Planter app. Use the link below. Get yourself a discount on the lifetime membership. You get it on the Google and Apple Play Store, and you can use it on any device you own. And I'm telling you, it's got all kinds of information in it. This long season, short season stuff, it'll be in there. Don't you worry about that. It has days of harvest in there, so you can visually see when you plan it out, and it makes it a lot easier for you. All right, question of the day. You ready for this one?
I am.
All right, so I'm going to summarize this one. Maddie writes,
Hey, Maddie.
she writes, hi, I'm asking your advice as a longtime gardener because I received a message from a response from somebody I was following for gardening local to my area. She messaged her about recommended grow lights that she purchased, and then she sent 2 photos because she thought her seedlings were looking leggy, even though they had just sprouted. So basically, at the end of this exchange, which she sent us the exchange, which I'm not going to read on here, she said, at the end, she tells me soil blocking is a challenge, but doesn't explain why. Now I'm feeling a little intimidated when I wasn't before this conversation. Do you know what she's referring to in saying that soil blocking is more challenging? Key here. I am a newbie at seed starting, but not gardening. Any advice is appreciated. The other thing to say before we get is this lady has a gardening school that she charges. And the listener was like, why should I do that when I have the internet? You listen to Backyard Gardens podcast for free. Got 400 episodes. We got you covered. What do you think?
Mm. I wish I used soil blocking. Like I wish I, had, decided, hey, this is what I want to do. I'm going to stick with it and figure
Why?
it out. Um, because remember, we're talking about purging things, and the containers are crawling all around my
Mm,
basement floor, right? But ironically, that's one of the things that makes seed starting easier compared to soil blocking. I've never, and that's the whole idea, the disclaimer, I've never used soil blocks. I've actually watched quite a few videos on it. I've not read a ton on it, but from everything that I've seen, the soil makeup, kind of how you're making up soil and keeping that consistency, as far as the depth of the soil, and then how much or how little you're watering, I would imagine is a challenge for anyone that's starting out with soil blocks.
yeah.
Like it's supposed to be its own entity, like this block of soil, right? Where I have a seed starting cell and my soil is going to stay together because guess what? It's in that seed starting cell. So I imagine it's difficult because it's kind of like if you're making brownies and you don't have the recipe necessarily. Like, is your mix, is your batter too thick, too thin? Pancakes, even, is a good example. Too thick,
Yeah.
too thin. Like, is it going to be a watery mixture? Is it going to dry out faster? Like all of those things are the components. I firmly believe though people that use them that you see a lot online, I feel like they figured it out. I feel like it's trial and error. That's what's in my
Yeah.
mind. And I've just not wanted to spend that energy on it.
I've never soil blocked, and when she asked me why it would, or asked us why it would be challenging, I immediately thought, why don't I soil block? That was my first thought, right? Because I've seen it, obviously, and it's never ever appealed to me. It's messy, it's extra work, it dries out quick, more, it can be faster to dry out. And so, just like you said, this consistency of the soil is everything, and the moisture content helps keep it together. But then the other thing too is if you
He's going deeper, ladies and gentlemen.
deeper, if you let all those, so the soil blocks is just, if you're not familiar with what it is basically just soil. And there's a machine you can get, I think it's like $80. It ain't cheap. They probably have a cheaper one out there, but it makes like 6, 8, whatever at once. And you put your seeds in each block. Well, the soil is touching across the board. So those roots can kind of fan out.
Mm.
Now, the question becomes, when you go to transplant them, first of all, if you do it in time before those roots spread, not a big deal. But most
Mm-hmm.
people don't transplant in time. They start seeds too early and they start to spread and they get tangled. And then you start getting into that tearing of the roots. So are
Mm-hmm.
we causing undue stress at that point?
Mm-hmm.
On the other side, when you take a plant out of a seed cell, you are stressing the roots as well. The only thing I can think
Yeah.
of is you're not breaking the roots. Now, breaking
Yeah.
roots is not a terrible thing because it actually makes more feeder roots, finer roots to feed, but when you have a small plant, it's not really doesn't work that way.
I didn't see Maddie's message, but you did read it a little bit more before the show. So I did have which I almost never have, the preview of this.
Yeah.
But this time I heard legginess.
Yeah.
So my immediate thought is if it's not lights, the distance between the soil block and the lights, if that's not problematic, then maybe it's seed depth. Um, it would seem that leggy plants wouldn't be inherent to soil block using soil blocks.
It's a light
Like
issue.
yeah, I'm struggling with why that would be the thing. Now again, she may have been writing to that person around more than one issue, but I mean, if you've I've never priced out the machines because they're different sizes too. If you spent the time and money to start using soil blocks, I'd stick with it. I don't think it also hurts to get maybe a couple of seed sales. You know, you can do some comparing and contrasting. You know, I love a good garden experiment. Doesn't mean
Yeah.
that you need to do half and half, but you want to make sure that you're not overly stressed around kind of this experience of newly starting seeds. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think for sure stick with it. Maybe this is something that again, if you already had, because we already know what our preferences are when it comes to seed starting material, but you can start seeds in most anything, as long as you have some drainage holes. So if you don't want to spend any more money, you may have some containers lying around where you can at least for sure get some things started and maybe compare them to what you're starting in your soil blocks. And you may have a better result, meaning more guaranteed to actually get plants out of your growing area into the garden. And then I'd say maybe in a slower part of the seed starting season, you can play around with it a little bit more. You
Yeah.
know,
So to be clear, she messaged the lady because she thought her seedlings were leggy, and
uh-huh.
the lady brought it up because she saw soil blocks. So
Mm-hmm,
she just
hmm.
kind of added that in.
Oh, okay,
Um,
okay, I got
if
you.
you've got leggy
Oh, so
plants,
wait, Maddie wasn't even asking necessarily
no, not
about
about soil
soil.
blocking.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean,
So
so I
hold on.
I don't want to poo poo on this lady, right? Because I don't know her, and again, it could just be, hey, this is this interaction that's electronic. Um, I wonder if she offers some class that shows you how to start seeds using soil blocks.
Her answer was very basic. And if I read in between the lines, like, pay me the money and I will tell you. It's very short and to the point. I get it, but if your seedlings are leggy, it's a light issue. So light should be on roughly, most people 16 hours. I put mine on for 18 hours. Anything less than that, you run the risk of it, and then move them close, move them
Mhm.
down, and get them. I mean, my seedlings right now, the light's probably about an inch above them, maybe an inch and a half, to put it into
Mhm.
perspective. Now, as that plant grows, they will get taller and higher and higher. I have to raise the light with it, but that's something that legginess is almost always due to light. It's not
Mhm.
nutrition or anything like that.
I've had for some flowers that I've started that I thought I had the timing right. I didn't turn the lights on yet, and I came down like maybe a day and a half, late. Like they had been growing for a day and a
Mm-hmm.
half, and it was like they were just wobbling is it they're like that thing in the in front of the car dealerships and stuff, the balloon
Yeah,
man,
the
like
noodle
I'm
dude.
like, good grief. Yeah. Maybe
Yeah,
2
because I
days.
mean, they're all yellow and looking weak.
Mhm, mhm.
So, Maddie, I'm sorry you had that interaction. I wish somebody would have given you, or she would have given, or they, I don't even know if it was a she, they would have given you more explanation into why soil blocks could be a challenge. But I get it. Luckily, we're here and we're free, so we'll help you. Next time, Maddie, include a picture as well. So
Mhm,
send a picture of the issue that you had. It always helps. A picture is worth 1,000 words,
mhm,
literally.
mhm.
So you could almost send us just a picture, and we could go through and answer a question. Just look at the picture and answer the question. Almost,
Well,
wouldn't you
it
say?
seems like that's what the person did. It's like, "Hey, I'm gonna maybe acknowledge the thing you're actually asking me about, but I'm gonna point out a couple of things since you're
Yeah,
coming to me." I see that on the interweb when sometimes people post, but I have the discipline to say they didn't ask for opinions, so there's no need for me. I mean, if
yeah,
it's something egregious, then maybe, but there's no need for me to jump in and say, "Hey, that light is really, a foot above. Really, should it be?" Like that's not my jam.
yeah. I mean, it, the whole the thing is it's a technique to get engagement and to get business,
Mhm, mhm.
and it's gross
It
in my
sounds like it,
opinion.
yeah.
Yeah, it's gross. So, one thing I will say, Maddie, And it's a little late for this, but I would walk before I run. Starting in seed cells, if you're new to seed starting, can always is a very forgiving learning experience. That it's a stepping
Mm-hmm.
stone, and then you move on. But you're
Mm-hmm.
already there. Go for it. Get through this season. Make your decisions. Um, I don't know. Soil blocking is not for me. I'm not saying that it's a terrible method, but it's just not what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
You?
Mm-hmm.
You gonna switch over?
No, I don't envision
Not
changing
switching
over.
teams?
Like if I inherited like the giddy up things, the soul blocker, I probably would give it a try. But I didn't mention the mess of it. But yeah, that's a concern of mine as well, kind of the mess
Yeah.
of it. And it's just one more thing I have to babysit closer. Because again, the idea of that thing drying out, based on the number of seedlings I'm starting. So that's absolutely a factor. If
I've
I
got.
were starting,
Go ahead.
ironically, I think that's why some people actually also use soil blocks because they start so many of them. But it's preference. I think absolutely personal preference.
I've got 400 seedlings on one shelf right now. If I was soil blocking, I would not have space for that. So it just
Mm-hmm.
takes up more space.
Yeah.
Either way, if you want to be like Maddie and send us a question, you may do so on bygquestion@gmail.com. It is the preferable method, but you can always hit us up on YouTube or our Facebook page, Facebook gardening group, the Backyard Gardens Community Garden.
Mm-hmm.
It's a long name, I know. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. But yeah, and come check us out. Get some seeds, some seed starting tools. Yeah, they're pretty sweet. And check us out on YouTube. Like I said, we'd love to see you over there. We're trying to hit our metrics so that we can open things up for you. So come subscribe, watch a couple videos, get to know your boy and your girl. Let's do this thing. All right. On this show, we do two things. Well, actually, me and Batavia are going to do one, and you're going to do the other. We
Mm-hmm.
are going to grow for change, and you're going to learn to grow.
See ya.